everyone fled one after another into Dark Island, feeling their way forward through the narrow passage. Along the way, Hex couldn't suppress his curiosity and asked Lao Hei who exactly wanted him dead. It turned out that Jirban, in order to vent his anger, had sent people to hunt Lao Hei down, but he never expected them to return empty-handed. Furious, Jirban unleashed all his firepower on his own men, beating them half to death, until Lao Hei arrived just in time. They planned to finish Lao Hei off together, but they were no match for him. After only a few exchanges, they were beaten to a pulp and fell one by one. To protect his wife, Lao Hei made a painful decision. He told her to report to the police that he had beaten her, deliberately staging a case of domestic violence and creating the illusion that he had fled in fear. This way, he could hide himself, and the missing killers he had dealt with cleanly would never be traced back to his wife. His plan worked perfectly. Lao Hei lay low for 3 whole years, until his whereabouts were accidentally exposed. As they spoke, the group reached the area near the exit. Lao Hei told them to move forward a bit more and they would be out. He himself had to stay behind to clean up the bodies of the killers. After exchanging farewells, they parted ways. Just as Lao Hei had predicted, by evening, heavily armed police units surrounded his house. Lao Hei, however, calmly sat in front of the surveillance monitors, leisurely watching the show. The police immediately began smashing the door, and it looked as if the defenses were about to be breached. Lao Hei decisively fired a few shots, suppressed them, walked to the door, and gently unlocked it. The attackers refused to give up and prepared to continue the assault. At that moment, the lights suddenly went out. Lao Hei popped his head out from the rooftop and fired an arrow with deadly precision. Another body fell to the ground, twitching. The entire house had become an impregnable fortress. They simply couldn't break through. So the police fired smoke grenades, trying to force Lao Hei out. But just as they retreated into their vehicles, Lao Hei appeared in front of them with a gun in hand. Not a single person in the car dared to move. When they learned that Lao Hei was letting them go, they fled the scene in panic, tongues tied in fear. Even the police couldn't handle Lao Hei, which left Jirban seething with rage. He had spent a fortune bribing high-ranking local officials, yet the whole thing ended in a mess. Enraged, he immediately sent his lawyer back to pressure those officials again. Lao Hei had to be eliminated. Otherwise, as long as Lao Hei lived, no one would have a good day. The lawyer understood the stakes and had no choice but to comply. This time, they set their sights on Hex. However, they underestimated Hex's resolve. People from the underworld always value loyalty above all else. Hex would rather die than betray even a shred of Lao Hei's trust. Seeing how unyielding he was, the corrupt cops took him to a desolate wilderness, planning to get serious and see just how tough he really was. They thought that by using Hex as bait, Lao Hei would obediently come to the rescue. But they didn't know that the two of them weren't actually that close. At that very moment, a bullet precisely pierced the corrupt cop's throat. Lao Hei's men swarmed in like wolves. Lao Hei had no intention of wasting time fighting them head-on. He turned and ran downhill, with the killers chasing after him. The pursuers had no idea that Lao Hei was deliberately draining their stamina. Before long, they were all gasping for breath, barely able to keep up. Suddenly, Lao Hei stopped. A scream rang out. 3 vehicles then plowed straight through the group, wiping them all out. Lao Hei turned back, freed Hex from his restraints, and returned the gold emblem that the corrupt cops had taken from him. The two then got into an 8-year-old car and drove off rapidly, disappearing from the area. At the same time, Oscars had also arrived at Lao Hei's residence. Worried about his safety, he knocked on the door repeatedly,